So first of all, I want to thanks everybody for showing up, and I know it's difficult time right now with this COVID, with this air pollution and everything that happens in Washington State. Everybody's a little bit concerned about what's going to happen. We have few news again for the chamber. We're looking at new membership, and we do have a membership drive. I would love, there we go, back to school and back to work, membership special. So for those who are not familiar with this, we're running some specials. For next year, if you join, you can have the rest of this year for free, basically. I am gonna let Jennifer explain a little bit more of what we do online and with all the media, social media, ads and so on. So please, Jennifer, if you don't mind, give us a few words about the program.
So like Gabe mentioned, we are running a membership drive this month. So anyone that buys a membership for next year, 2021, gets the rest of this year complimentary. And then we're also doing a social media campaign called Tumwater Tuesdays. So we are going to be posting every Tuesday a local Tumwater business. We encourage you all to do the same as well. If you go get dinner somewhere or just someone that you really love to work with, post on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you're at with the hashtag Tumwater Tuesday, just to show our community a little bit more love during these challenging times. And we're going to be featuring those on Facebook, and then we are starting, continuing a monthly newsletter, so we'll feature some of that information in there as well. And yeah, so if you need to renew your membership, do that now. If you're not a member, go ahead and join, and you get a little extra bonus for the rest of the year.
Thank you, Jennifer. And with that in mind, if you guys know people that are not members, business owners, or people can make decisions for some type of business, and they are in Tumwater, they want to be active in the community, they want to have a little bit of visibility, please let them know about the program. Invite them, and we can definitely help everybody. Just keep in mind that, you know, we're still active, even though we're online and so on. We're hoping to go back to face-to-face lunches as soon as we are allowed to. Right now, we're stuck on front of the screen and with our cameras and microphones, and that's, you know, that's not bad to have. Everybody can still be active here. We have a special program today. We're gonna talk a little bit about some of the insurance challenges with these times and riots, and Eric Zabala is gonna enlighten our knowledge a little bit more about what's going on in the insurance world and how we can take advantage, whether it's personal or business insurance, how to protect our business and our personal property. I don't see anybody from the city, so I don't think we're gonna have any updates today. I do want to mention a few of our board of directors: Gina Kotek, Kevin Harris, our host today, Eric Zabala, and Brian Hardcastle. All of them are board of directors, and thank you guys for taking the time to spend your lunch in front of the TV, right? In front of your computer. Without further ado, I'm gonna give Eric the word, and then after his program, please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask him or us. We'll try to give you the best answer we can. And then I'll continue with the rest of the news, and hopefully we'll get everything on time. Eric, he's the agency owner in Tumwater for State Farm, and he's been in Tumwater for quite a while. We did post his bio on the newsletter, and it's quite a good sized bio. And I really thank you for sharing that with us, Eric. So without further ado, please take over.
All right, thanks, Gabe, and hello to everyone that's here today. Yeah, just to give a little bit about myself. So I've actually been a State Farm agent now for almost 2 years, and actually this was the main second year of being a business owner, and it's been an interesting one. Without going into any detail on what's been going on in 2020, as I'm sure you're all aware. So before my time as a State Farm agent, I actually worked on the corporate side for State Farm for 7 years before this. So I've got about 9 years of insurance experience. And a good portion of that actually has to do with working with legislators and State Farm agents beforehand, just to connect them on business impacts to the industry and how to be a good constituent as a business owner. It's very challenging for legislators to get that perspective from business owners, and so being connected as a business owner is very important when it comes to decision making at the legislature. So before my days as a State Farm agent, I actually was in the military, in the Army as a military police investigator for 8 years, so nothing to do with insurance whatsoever. And so it's kind of a diverse background, going from, running investigations and doing diplomatic security operations to the transition of insurance agent. So it's quite a different dynamic, but I will tell you that it's been very beneficial and definitely was a better family choice at the time, and for self-preservation at a certain point with everything. And so what I kind of want to talk to you guys about today is a little bit more about like business insurance. And we get a lot of questions that come into the office from customers starting a business, whether they're a sole proprietor or a corporation. And many times it's mom and pops. They have an idea of what they want to do, and they come in and they just want to try to get insurance for it, or they don't know where to start. So just to kind of give a little bit of a background on some of the questions that we really come across from new business owners and even current business owners. Sole proprietorships, limited liability companies, corporations. We get a lot of folks that come in as a sole proprietor, which is very easy, as we've heard previously before on like tax of your household and some of those. But when I'm looking at it from an insurance agent perspective, everything that we really deal with is risk management. That's really what insurance is designed to do, right? Is figure out what risk exposures that you have, whether it's personally or as a business owner, and then find out how to fill those gaps. That's what we're trying to do. And so a lot of it actually starts with the business entity. Sole proprietor, like I said, is easy to do, but a lot of times you have a lot more risk shifted from your household when you're looking at a limited liability company or a corporation. It really just depends on the business entity that you're setting up and what type of business operations you're doing. So that's usually where we're having kind of the first conversation with customers. And usually at that point, we'll kind of refer them to some legal guidance if needed for their business structure to make sure it's going to fit the needs and ultimately protect their household if they get sued for something, and really minimize that risk or eliminate the risk altogether. So a little background on State Farm agents. So we are full independent contractors. I'm a captive agent, meaning I only sell State Farm products and service State Farm products. But everything I do is 100% on me as the business owner, whether it's, the employees, payroll, insurance, marketing, all of it's 100% on us. And so I understand like the risks that you have as a business owner and what you're really trying to look at to mitigate those. So for an example, I'm set up as an S corporation, which completely eliminates the risk from my household, as long as you don't intermingle certain things. And then and on top of that, for tax purposes, it also protects me personally as well, so I don't get taxed personally on something from an S corporation as a business. So there's a number of different pieces that go in initially when we're talking with the customer. So as far as the current environment, looking at different business issues, I thought it would be timely, given what's been going on in the, nationally, really to discuss a few main points. And one being, riot and civil commotion, vandalism. That's been a huge one for business owners, as we're still experiencing that. And it's just, it's really a challenge for a lot of businesses. And there's a number of questions that come up obviously during the pandemic, and one of them also being business interruption, which I'll touch on briefly as well. So when it comes to riot and civil commotion, most insurance companies have this in here where it's a covered item in terms of a commercial policy. It's pretty standard. Some of the things that are not covered in a traditional commercial policy usually are things related to a pandemic. And this is where the business interruption piece comes up. And I bring it up because I know this is definitely a hot topic. When insurance companies are looking at insuring a risk, we're looking at it from a property and casualty standpoint, meaning we're looking at insuring your business property, right, or the liability that you have on that property. And then we're also looking at the casualty piece of it, so the liability to injury, or it could be medical injury, or it could be some other injury that comes throughout the operation of your business. A few things that are typically excluded, and just in most policies, there's very few companies, tend to be things related to war and pandemics. And the reason I bring this up is, it's important to look, but there are very few insurance companies that are structured when they charge you for your business policy or for your personal policy on handling these losses. Meaning if an insurance company had to handle the loss and they weren't designed and weren't charging the proper premium to handle these losses, then what happens is that insurance company no longer exists, meaning it goes out of business, becomes insolvent. And this is always a challenge because even as a business owner in mine, I don't have a business interruption piece for a pandemic, right? State Farm, I will say, is one that does not. And most of the companies that offer it, many people don't have it under those policies because it's very expensive. So there becomes a cost issue with it. So I kind of wanted to throw that in there just to give a little perspective in terms of how insurance companies look at it. It's the same thing when you're looking at certain programs like earthquake policies and flood. There's certain niche entities that really take a bulk of these because they're designed to handle the large level of risk and not become insolvent or bankrupt when a large loss occurs. That's where the issue can really arise. And so this is the first pandemic I'm aware of that we've hit in the United States, and it's just it's definitely an interesting time and learning curve to go through this and experience it. And there's a lot of things that are still being battled out, even in the courts today, just to kind of figure out what that stuff's going to look like in the future. We've never experienced this type of stuff. I'm going to leave it just right there for a second if there's any questions on that category, because I know that's been a very hot topic. Danny.
I wasn't thinking about this until you mentioned it, but it sounds like some businesses will be able to file claims that they expect to be paid in the same way that I was told that if there's ever a flood, you should make sure there's also a fire. That's a statement and a question at the same time. Like, flood's not covered, but if there's a fire, then it's covered. Maybe I'm thinking of earthquake. If there's an earthquake, you're not covered, but if there's a fire, you're covered. So if your house burns down during an earthquake, the fire insurance company will pay. But if there's just a run-of-the-mill earthquake, you're out of luck. So is
Yeah,
there-
you've got a general idea that's right there. So when you're looking at like commercial policies can be a little more broad, but even personal policies for like your homeowner's insurance, right? Typically flood, meaning like rising water from outside, not because your faucet breaks inside of your building or your home. And earthquake are separate coverages. So they're usually either offered in an endorsement format, so added to a policy, or by another company. And many times, like the flood piece comes up if you fall under a flood plain, or there's prior history of a flood. And that usually goes through the National Flood Program. Charlie?
Yeah, hi. Well, first of all, thank you for being here, Eric, and thank you for being so supportive of our community. I appreciate that. So my question is, we're having historical hurricanes this year, and if a hurricane creates flooding and also destruction through the winds, is that covered, or what? How does State Farm classify that as a flood or wind damage? I guess is my question.
Yeah, so whenever a hurricane brings in a massive amount of water, it usually falls under a flood. Those states typically that are impacted, policies are a little bit different in terms of what's offered in those states, right? So like Florida is a good example. You know, Florida is going to have more stuff set up in terms of home policies in reference to hurricanes, right? And this is also where bank entities and stuff get into the mix too, in terms of what properties need to have it and what ones don't. So it really does vary, but each state is slightly different in how those have to be enforced, and also sometimes how the policies will have to be implemented in those states. So typically there is going to be some form of coverage for hurricane and flooding for those properties that are at a high risk for it. And before we even write insurance in those areas, we have a risk tool typically that will tell us if they fall under one of those categories. And then of course, then the insurance agent from that point knows how those policies need to be written moving forward to make sure that we're ensuring the proper risk for the homeowner or the business entity. And so that way, if that does happen, there's not going to be an issue with it. And then typically, kind of like you see with wildfires, you know, wildfires is a covered item. What happens is if it's in the middle of a storm, you'll usually see insurance companies stop writing insurance. It's called a moratorium. And a lot of times, some of these things are implemented by the state, just depends on what the issue is. And so that's to help also protect the insurance company from writing risks that you know are going to be a loss if they're not already insured before. Because sometimes you will get a surge of that where people try to protect a property in the middle of a storm when they didn't have insurance, knowing that they're probably going to lose their home, and something along those lines. But a lot of those are going to vary by state in those specific states that have a larger impact. When we had the issues down in Texas a few years ago is a good example. You know, we paid out $7 billion just for that hurricane that went into Texas, just as State Farm. When it comes to like your auto policies and those, they're covered. It doesn't matter if it's a hurricane or whatever the issue is. But we ended up covering those losses, you know, at $7 billion loss. Just like when we handle the California losses with these wildfires, you know, each year has been costing us about $3 billion just for State Farm homeowners claims to handle all of those losses that are coming through. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does. I appreciate that. And I do have one other question.
Yeah.
So since we're having record wildfires in California and obviously record hurricanes down southeast, is State Farm going to pay record amount of premiums out on that? And if so, is that going to affect all of us as a nation who are State Farm policyholders?
Yeah. So when it comes at in terms of the exact number of what we're going to pay out, we usually don't know until the year after when everything's kind of settled down a bit. But typically State Farm, that's actually one area we're very unique. So we actually have catastrophe teams. So when these things occur across the US, we have a full-blown team that typically deploys for months at a time, handles claims right on site. So they can do complete total losses of vehicles and homes right on site, and actually establish different stations and stuff that customers can come to that are organized within the community, and typically the Red Cross as well, to allow for support. Historically, like when we've paid out these massive losses, many times for us, we suck it up and we keep on moving forward. So when it comes to catastrophes, it's not something that typically we penalize anybody for, because they have no control over it for that. So like when we suck up these $3 billion losses, we write it off and we continue to move forward. State Farm has the financial strength to be able to do that. And that's why it's also still one of the #1, insurance companies for our financial strength and how we handle claims and our ability to handle claims on that piece. So that is unique in terms of how we do it. And there's been a number of past articles on this question and how we handle it. And so we're very well known for moving forward, not passing that along to the customer in the process.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next topic here because I know time will fly by fast. Another thing I wanted to bring up for businesses that comes up probably more often than anything that we encounter with the previous losses that we're talking about is actually employment practices liability insurance. And a lot of you might know this just as like an E&O, like air and emissions policies and things that fall under that nature. And so one of the biggest things that come up, and a lot of business owners don't have this, are just claims, from employees, from being in an employer, right? So this could be anything from harassment, so being sued by an employee of yours as a business owner for some sort of harassment or claiming harassment. Doesn't necessarily, that's always up in the air because it depends on how the person perceives it. That's what makes these so difficult. Discrimination, so job applicant discrimination, right? So even before you have an employee in the door, you could actually have a suit filed against you for, unfair practices in terms of how you hire folks. For instance, if you had a job applicant who was pregnant and declined them. So these are a number of risks that come up that a lot of times are kind of looked or glazed over, but it's actually one of the higher risks that we face. And just to give an idea, probably within the last 15 years, these claims used to be roughly around like $78 million a year, and they're probably in excess about 300 million per year at least in these type of claims, just over that time frame. So it's definitely a very significant piece of the business that you'd want to look at when this stuff comes up. And part of it, that even if the claim, say, is not substantiated, meaning the business owner wasn't liable, one of the things that make this difficult is the legal defense costs in order to protect yourself. You can still be liable for those costs even though you didn't do anything, and the court dates just continue to try to get that stuff figured out. So it's definitely something you always want to look at as a business owner, and just to kind of make sure that you've got that item kind of covered or looked at. One of the other pieces that we come across more recently lately too is identity restoration and data compromise. This isn't anything new. People are getting more creative. We ran into it with the unemployment claims, the cost associated. So when there's a breach, the cost isn't necessarily associated with you fixing that person's identity. The cost as a business owner tends to be associated with the notification of customers, right? and then running and paying for customers' consumer reports because you had a breach. These type of costs can be very substantial, and depending on your business, these are definitely things to look at nowadays. If you haven't, or review it, just to make sure you have something like that in place if it's necessary. A lot of times when we do like our IT consultants and stuff like this, we have this employment practices, liability, and identity restoration type stuff built into the policies, just because of the risk of the business. You know, sometimes your type of business will have something that's added to it from a standard business policy just based off of how it works. So that's definitely something that's up and coming, as we're well aware, just with the technology that we have to use these days and the risks we have. The other thing I wanted to kind of bring up briefly is business auto and personal auto. You know, as a business owner, one of the things often overlooked is how we use our auto. Typically anything in the insurance world, if it falls under a business, if you had it listed as personal use, an insurance company is more than likely going to deny it, right? And so it's always good to take a look at those and how like your vehicle is used for work. And many of them can add a business provision onto your current auto policy just so they have the risk exposure on there for the use of the vehicle. But these are often little things that a lot of folks or mom and pops folks don't look at, and it's overlooked, but it can actually become very costly if you were to have an accident and find out your business policy won't cover it because you were driving a personal vehicle and didn't have it listed properly. So there's a number of different things to kind of look at with this, but these are just a few things I really wanted to touch on and just give a little bit of insight. And from there, I'll kind of open it up if anybody has any other questions or specific questions, because I'm sure I've gone over time here.
No, you're actually fine with time. We got plenty of time still there, Eric.
Feel free to be a lively bunch here. We got to make Zoom exciting somehow.
I have a question sure to not be entirely popular. Many people are driving 80% less than they were, but they're not paying 80% less for their car insurance. What's wrong with this picture?
I think you labeled that one, Danny, on what's wrong with it. So every company handles this situation a little differently, right? So State Farm as a company, when this initiated, we gave back about 27.5% of auto premium over a 2.5 month period initially for the COVID-19 relief, right? So we did that between, I believe it was middle of March and end of May. And since then, like our company, we actually reduced our rates by over 14.5% for all of our auto premiums and have reviewed with customers on a regular basis on what their current mileage is. You know, to reduce that mileage, if they were driving 12,000 miles a year and now they're driving 4,000, we need to update it. There's a lot more folks working from home. That's how we've handled it. There are a number of lawsuits going on right now with some other companies on how they handled it, or even to where they filed increases on their auto premiums and trying to justify that. And I can't speak to those companies, but everybody is handling it a little different. So it's one of those, this is very good to be proactive as a consumer and touch base with your insurance agent or company and say, hey, I'm not driving as much. What can we do to get this updated, and what will it do to my auto premium?
Do you sell by the mile insurance?
We don't. There's a few companies out there that do, but we do, you know, as a company, kind of put them in certain categories or buckets in terms of how many miles you're driving per year. And then it decreases based off that.
I do have
Or increases.
I do have a question about mileage.
Yeah.
How does a company, you know, survey how many miles you get on your car?
So it varies on each company. Most companies now have some sort of a driving app right? That kind of says how you drive your vehicle or how many miles you're driving per year for it. Because a lot of companies are kind of looking at what Danny had mentioned in terms of driving by the mile. You know, in order to do that, they need more data in terms of trying to figure out what this model might look like. There are some companies that kind of do that currently, but otherwise verifying, you know, if you're in a certain mileage rate, you know, a certain mileage number for us, we'll usually verify your odometer each year if it's really low, just to see if you're actually driving low miles. And if you are, fantastic, we leave it at that, no problem. You know, if you end up saying you drive 2,000 and you drove 10,000, then you typically just get re-rated for driving 10,000 miles, not 2,000 miles. That's probably how most companies come up with that data for that decision.
Thank you.
But hey, Eric, this is Kevin Harris. But to Danny's deal, miles is not the exact correlation to car insurance. I mean, it's not 80-80. It's not going to be like that because insurance covers so many other variables that there's an expense to it. So you could have 4 vehicles. You can only drive one at a time. Just because you drive the other 3 0, you still have to insurance them in case something else happened when you happen to be driving them. But there's also all the other factors that go into it. So when I hear the 80-80 exact matching, I'm like, no, it's not really. It's one of the variables of auto insurance.
Yeah, and we run into that issue on a regular basis where people don't understand that, because each household literally is different. Each household has different risks. You know, if Gabe drives 80 miles an hour every day and has 4 speeding tickets, and Kevin has 0 speeding tickets, you know, should they be charged the same? No, that's not how it works. So
you have seen Gabe drive, right?
Yeah, I've been in his car with him. We're just kidding, Gabe. You drove fine. But no, there are other pieces behind the scenes on an actuary basis where they calculate the risk in terms of like prior claims that somebody has had, you know, speeding tickets and other, you know, pieces out of the consumer report that they can get to kind of build a mathematical piece on how they figure out what that household risk should be rated at. Anything else?
Any other questions? Come on, guys.
I'm in the hot seat right now, so.
I guess, Eric, one thing I have learned is to, you know, you get insurance, you kind of leave it alone. I would reach out and get a good working relationship with your insurance person and have a relationship, because they need to understand how you've changed and where, you know, the possibilities of different discounting and all that sort of stuff. And it kind of took me a while to kind of understand how important that is. So doing business with a person is important, and to have that relationship that understands you, and that's the personal side of it. And kind of learned that over time. I mean, I've been with the same insurance agency for a long time, and it kind of like when you get a competitive bid or something, or try and understand something, then all of a sudden you get a different discount. I'm like, well, wait a second. You know, you got to get to know the person that it's more than an internet. It's more than just a number. You know, it's important for that person on the other side to understand what your needs are and how it's changing.
Yeah, I'd say probably 90% of like my customer base are folks that have gone with us because we actually sit down and talk with them, and they can explain the coverage that they're buying, right? Because every company is different, but it is a lot different when you have a dedicated person whose sole purpose is to make sure you understand what you're purchasing and to understand what your needs are in terms of a customer, to make sure that your risk exposures are taken care of for what you want it to do. I think everybody should review their stuff each year. I contact all my customers every year, and if you're one that says, no, I don't want to look at it, I'm going to have a note in your file that says we tried. You know, because in my experience already, you know, we run into a lot of folks that come back and they're upset about how a claim was handled or what was covered. And it's because they wouldn't sit down and review it so we could make sure that they had what they needed, right? We don't run into that very frequently, but it's usually for folks that, you know, are under the impression they've got it covered, or they just don't want to look at it. So it really does vary, but I encourage people to look at it. And I encourage you too, if you do have other companies you've had for years, every now and then get a competitive bid, you know, for the same coverages, make sure that it's the same across the board. And, you know, if you are at one of those companies where all of a sudden new discounts are coming out for retention, I would ask why you weren't getting them before. You know, yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
Okay, I have a question for you, and I'm trying to be funny. You said you want to lighten this up a little bit. So I've been with State Farm Car Insurance for 47 years. And my question is, why did you pick Aaron Rodgers over me to make the commercial?
You know, I tried talking with them about that, Charlie, and they wouldn't give me a solid answer. So I don't know why they picked Aaron Rodgers either.
Well, I'm thinking I'm penalized because I'm
Aaron Rodgers, right, on this recorded deal here. But
well, I'm thinking I'm penalized because I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan, so I'll be discriminated against.
That's probably it right there. Do we have any questions? I really appreciate you guys being a little more proactive with this. You know, insurance is only as exciting as you make it, right?
That's right.
Well, I appreciate the time, and if anybody has any questions, you know, always feel free to reach out to myself, or actually you can reach out to Gina Kotek as well for that. And just appreciate everybody's time. And if you have any questions, reach out afterwards. Even if you're not with my agency and you just want to understand how some of your stuff works, I'm always happy to sit down and look at it with you. So that our number one thing with our agency is the education piece. Right. So in that sense, I'm not a very good salesperson, but I guarantee you're going to understand what it is you're looking at and what you're getting. So there's a trade-off. Well, I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much, Eric. Very nice presentation and very informative. I like a lot of the stuff that you presented. There's always new stuff to learn, and even insurance, as boring as it sounds, can be interesting, guys. So there's always things we can learn, and there's always things we can find out. I'm looking forward to next month forum, and I believe Kerry's gonna set up something else on the date, October 21st. And I'm not sure, I think we already have a program. Hopefully something.
L&I. I can't remember the name of the person, but he's from L&I.
Okay, so we have L&I coming and introducing us to some things that are going on with claims and so on, and probably has to do a lot with COVID, a lot to with the things and the things that are happening today, right?
Yeah, it's Jim Lawrence. It's Jim Lawrence from L&I. He's the name. He's the presenter.
Perfect. We'll make sure to announce this way ahead of time for everybody to have some information on what we're going to talk about, and we're looking forward to a great presentation. Don't remember, we got a golf tournament. It's been moved in the spring of 2021, rescheduled due to the restrictions that we had. We probably going to have a golf cart drawing that's still up for grabs. We're still looking for sponsors, whole sponsors, event sponsors. I mean, we settled already an event sponsor, a name sponsor, and we secured a couple of others, but there's quite a bit open opportunities to sponsor the golf tournament. Take a look at the chamber charter. new TACC newsletter, and we'll have every month something new brought to you from our members, business owners, and business reviews and testimonials, a little bit of interviews and so on. I'm looking forward to next year. Hopefully after all these restrictions are lifted up, we're gonna do something a little bit different next year. We're still working on details, so I'm not gonna share too much with you today. Hopefully we can have a good surprise for everybody. I do want to mention Pete Kmet is here with us, and thank you for taking the time, Pete, to join us. He also let me know that some of the updates, the most important one, it's Capitol Boulevard, the north side, it's under construction, so avoid that area if possible. Other than that, looks like it's pretty quiet. We're looking at some type of update next month, Pete, if possible. If there is anything else, anybody has any announcements? No announcements at all? So if nothing else is going on, I would say thank you for everybody for participation. Looking forward to next month. Check your email from our invitation and so on. And everybody have a great weekend coming up. Stay safe, and looking forward to see all of you next month.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.